Alright, so this video is going to cover adding and subtracting fractions. The first thing we need to remember is that adding and subtracting fractions is exactly like comparing fractions. So if we had two fractions, say 1/2, and we were going to compare it to 2/3, our main goal is to get the same denominator. So our first step is to look and see the lowest common denominator for 2 and 3. Well, nothing goes into 2, that also goes into 3, so we're going to end up multiplying by the other denominator. And we end up with 3/6 and 4/6. Now, except instead of comparing, what we're going to end up doing is we are going to end up adding those together. So if I've got 3/6 and 4/6, so 3 and 4, so I've got 7 total pieces. And we need to remember that the denominator tells us the size of the pieces, and that doesn't actually change when we're adding, so we end up with 7/6. Now later we'll also convert this to mixed numbers, but right now that's not what this video is focusing on. So we're just going to focus on finding the actual addition answer. There will be another video later talking about, once again, converting improper to mixed numbers. So if we give another fraction, we'll go with 2/5, and we're going to add that to 1/4. So we're going to see, okay, well, 5, the only things that go into 5 are 1 and 5. Neither of those go into 4, so there's no shortcut. So we end up multiplying by the other denominator. And 2 times 4 gives us 8, with a common denominator of 20. 1 times 5 is 5, and 20. Well, 8 and 5 ends up giving us 13, and our denominator stays the same, so we have 13/20. All right, 2 more examples before we get to the sample questions. So if we end up with 3/4 plus 1/6. So once again, we always want to look to see if there is a shortcut. And if we look at 4 and 6, well, both can be divided by 2. So we're going to look, if you can figure it out, the lowest one is 12. If not, both of them can be divided by 2, so 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. So instead of multiplying by the other denominator, we go 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. And 6, well, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so we're going to end up multiplying this side by 3. We get a common denominator of 12, and 3 times 3 gives us 9, 1 times 2 gives us 2. We add them together, and we end up with 11/12. All right, so I'll give one more. This will be a subtraction question. So if I end up with 4. So if we end up with 3/8 and we subtract, let's go with 6 again, end up subtracting 1/6. So I need to find the lowest common denominator. Well, if we know our multiplication tables well, we know the lowest one that's going to work is 24. If not, I look and see, well, 2 can go into 8 and into 6. So I end up going 8 divided by 2 is 4. So instead of multiplying this one by 8, multiply by 4. And 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. Alright, so we end up with 3 times 3 is 9 24ths. And I'm going to subtract 4 24ths. 9 minus 4 gives us 5 24ths. Alright, so here are 4 sample questions. Write down the questions and pause the video. I'll give you a couple minutes to solve. Once you're done, just resume the video and we will go over the solutions. Alright, so first one, 3/5 plus 1/8. First thing we're going to do is see if there's any shortcuts. Well, the only thing that goes into 5 is 5. And 5 does not go into 8 evenly, so we're going to multiply by the other denominator to get a common denominator of 40. And 3 times 8 gives us 24. Now we're going to multiply by 5. And we get 24 plus 5 gives us 29 40ths. All right, 2/3 minus 1/9. So we're going to look once again for shortcuts. Well, 3 goes into 3. 3 also goes into 9. I can actually turn a 3 into a 9, so 1/9 will remain the same. And I'm going to multiply by 3, multiply by 3, and I end up with 6/9 minus 1/9 will give us 5/9. All right, 5/7 minus 1/2. Well, the only things that go into 2 are 2 and 1, and 2 does not go into 7, so there's no shortcut. So we'll end up multiplying 5/7 by 2 over 2 to give us a common denominator of 14. And 1/2, we're going to multiply by 7 over 7. So 1 times 7, 7 14ths, with a final answer of 3/14. All right, 5/9 plus 1/6, so I'm going to once again look for shortcuts. Well, I look at the lowest denominator and I get 6. Well, 2 and 3 both go into 6. Well, 3 goes into 9, so what that means is I can divide both denominators by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, so I'm going to multiply this side by 3 over 3. And on this side, I end up with 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. Gives me a common denominator of 18. 5 times 2 gives me 10. 1 times 3 gives me 3. And I end up with 13/18. Now, I am going to show you something else. I'm going to erase a couple of these answers because you may have had a different denominator. So if you didn't see the shortcuts, so for instance with question 2, if you didn't see the shortcuts, you can still get it correct. If you had a different denominator, what you would have is you ended up probably using 27 as a common denominator. That's okay. So what we would have done is you multiplied this side by 9 over 9, and you got 18/27. And on this side, you ended up multiplying by 3 over 3, which ends up giving you, so subtract 3/27, which ends up giving you 15/27. Now this is actually the correct answer as well. The only thing is, because you didn't see the shortcut at the beginning, you are going to need to do more simplification at the end. So you're going to look and see which numbers can go into 15. Well, 3 and 5, and look at 27. Well, 3 goes into 27, so I'm going to divide by 3 over 3. And then end up with 5/9, which is our original answer. So you did do the math correct, you just need to look for those shortcuts, otherwise you will need to do more simplification. In this case, for 13/18, you would have ended up having an answer of 39/54, which is correct. However, once again, you would need to work on that simplification. All right, the last step that we need to go over is when there are mixed numbers involved. So if we have something like 1 and 2/3, adding 1, let's just make it simple, with 1/2. So we end up, what we're going to do is we're going to turn everything into a mixed number, so or into an improper, my apologies. So 3 times 1 gives us 3, plus 2 gives us 5, so we end up with 5/3, adding 1/2. And now it's exactly the same as our original steps that we just did. We need to find the same denominator. Well, the common denominator is 6. So we're going to multiply this side by 2 over 2, this side by 3 over 3, and I end up with 10/6 plus 3/6, which gives us 13/6. So once again, you can review back to the previous video that had mixed numbers to improper and improper to mixed. So we would know, well, it takes 6 to fill up each box, and so I would have 2 full boxes. 6 times 2 gives me 12, which means I would have 1 box left over. So if this was a 2-mark question, this would get you your 1.5 marks. Converting it or simplifying it into a mixed number and then simplifying it more if necessary would get you that last half mark. If we had one more where we had 2 1/4, subtract 5/6. So once again, we're going to convert into improper fractions. So 2 times 4 gives me 8, plus 1 gives me 9. So I end up with 9/4 minus 5/6. And we're back down to the exact same steps we had before, where we end up taking, finding a common denominator. If you can see it, because you know your multiplication tables really well, you can see 12. If not, 2 goes into both of them. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I'm going to multiply this side by 2 over 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. I'm going to multiply by 3 over 3. And 9 times 3 gives us 27, so 27/12. And 10. That ends up leaving us with 17/12. And once again, this is an improper fraction, so I need to convert it into a mixed. So I'm going to see, well, it takes 12 to fill up, to make a full box. I would have 1 full box, and take 12 pieces away would leave me 5/12. All right, so I'm going to give you 2 sample questions of these, as the only real difference is converting them into improper fractions before you start. Once again, copy down the questions, pause the video. I'll give you a couple minutes to finish it. Resume the video when you are ready to go over these solutions. All right, let's start with 3 1/3, and we are going to add 7/8. And question 2 will end up being, all right, and we've got 4 1/5, and we're going to subtract 2 1/3. So we'll give you, pause the video once you've got these written down, and we'll go over the solutions when you're ready. All right, so we're going to look first. I've got a mixed number, so I'm going to convert that into an improper. So 3 times 3 gives me 9, plus 1 gives me 10/3, plus 7/8. I need to find a common denominator. Once again, so I'm doing multiplication tables. You'll see that 24 works. If you didn't, you look, well, there's nothing that goes into 3 that also goes into 8, so there is no shortcut. So I'm going to multiply by the other denominator. So we end up with 80 and 21. Put them together. Well, 80 plus 20 is 100, so I end up with 101 24ths. Well, once again, this would get you almost full marks. The last half mark would be converting into a mixed number, and so we would end up with 4 and 5 24ths. All right, 4 1/5 minus 2 1/3. There are a couple of things we can do at the beginning. One is if you can do the subtraction right away, I could take the 2 away from the 4, and I would be left with 2 1/5 minus 1/3. If we don't see that, that's okay. We still go through all the same steps, convert to an improper. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 gives us 21/5. And I've got 2 1/3, so I'm going to go 3 times 2 gives me 6, plus 1 gives me 7/3. There is no shortcut in this case because 3 does not go into 5, or none of the numbers that go into 3 go into 5. So I'm going to multiply by the other denominator, top and bottom. 21 times 3 ends up giving us 63/15ths, and I'm going to end up subtracting 35 15ths. So the denominator stays the same. 63 minus 30 ends up giving us 33. 33 minus 5 ends up giving us 27 15ths. Well, once again, it takes 15 to fill up a box. So I have one full box, and I would have 12 15ths left over. We need to remember to always check to see if we can simplify as well. With 12 15ths, 3 can go into both. Sorry, I'm just going to move this over a little so I can simplify. So I'm going to divide by 3 over 3, and I end up with 1 and 4/5. All right, so once again, there is going to be a practice question that should be right underneath this. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or come talk to me in class.